I've done some just kind of meet and greets and those kind of things before, but not for a couple years. So if there's an opportunity where we can actually come out of our holes and be together, I think it was a really good opportunity. And since I'm in this community, it felt even more special to be able to come and share. So thank you for coming and for having me and showing up. So that really means a lot. My name's Luke Daniels, if you couldn't tell, in case you forget. I've got it here. I even had my lovely wife, Amanda, here, has helped with our visual aids for tonight. We're real high tech at Luke Daniels Audio, and we'll get to that. But I am an audiobook narrator and producer, an actor, and I've worked for years in the system of audiobook production. And so a lot of times it's really nice to, and especially in a library scenario, everyone has different ways of reading, and audiobooks have become really popular. So does anybody listen to audiobooks here? Oh, wow. Almost all of you. Very good, very good. Yeah. So there's a lot of ways you can do it, but I know, and I didn't ask ahead of time, but I assume a lot of the libraries have audiobook lending programs. So that's another great way that you can get, and they're fantastic for when you're driving, gardening, those kind of things, listening in that way. And I've been really fortunate to do that for about 12 years, and started out in a company that was in Grand Haven in Michigan, and I work from home now in a studio I've built, but for companies all over the country doing audiobooks and production. So basically what that means is I sit in a little box with a microphone and a computer, run a program and talk into it, reading off of this script all day, which is great, but I don't get out a lot. Hence, hey, let's have a little talk where I can talk to people, because it's really nice. I do mostly fiction, so a lot of fantasy, sci-fi, that kind of stuff where we read and we have to do all the different voices and dialects, and that's where some of the training I had came in. But one of the main things, and I'd like to do, if it's okay, a little reading for everybody today, but it's from actually a book I wrote, which here it's an Audible original. So if you're on Audible, it's free. Doesn't cost anything, but you can certainly download it and listen to it. It's a memoir. I had a son, and he passed away, unfortunately, at 21 months, and he had a lot of health issues. And after that happened, I had to decide how to deal with the grief, but in my profession, and telling stories is kind of my livelihood, how do I tell his story? And so that was kind of where I started that journey of becoming an author as well and writing his story. And I thought I'd read a little bit from that today, if that's okay with everybody, to show you that. But beforehand, welcome you guys. How are you? Are you local too? Fantastic. Thanks for coming. One of the things that I find that I really want to kind of share is being a narrator is all about kind of finding your natural voice and how you speak. And I think that's actually relatable to everybody, I hope, because I think we all have our story that we need to tell and an ability to say it. And so if I can talk about what happened to me and in a way inspire other people to talk about whatever they need to, I think it's a really good way that people can come together, share stories, and we're in a library and it's all about story and words and reading, and I think that's just a kind of great place to come together. So that being said, I'll give you a little bit of backstory just to fill you in. So the book is, like I said, it's a memoir. My son passed, and it was a medical issue for his whole life. He was born with that. And being a narrator, I always read everybody else's stuff. I never had to write and then read my own. And that was a whole journey to kind of discover not just my own voice, but then how to write your narrative, your author voice. And those were different. And so I had to decide it's a real tough story, so I brought in some elements from my life before him to try to kind of fill it out a little bit with some humor. And so in this section, it goes back to when I was a little boy and some of the things that happened that kind of set up for who I was later to have to deal with this, big dramatic tragedy, basically. So this is from Unspoken. Like I said, you can find it on Audible. All right, Thanksgiving, the late 80s before Finn. I think I'm gonna stand up. My paternal grandmother, Elizabeth, had a morbid sense of humor of her own and lived by a philosophy to be prepared for shit to happen consistently and frequently in life. Now, she gleaned this life lesson from her own trauma and passed it down to her grandchildren to try to prepare us for the worst that she assumed would inevitably happen. And I was never more grateful for the grit I inherited from her than during the 21 months we spent fighting for Finn. And frankly, as a kid, she terrified me. But now I wish I'd taken the time to get to know her better. She was stern and sharp-tongued. I remember she always had coloring books waiting for me and my brothers when we visit her in Kansas City, and as well as newspaper clippings decorating her walls about my dad's various acting accomplishments. But before she was my grandmother, she was a little girl. And as the family lore goes, one day Elizabeth came home from school to find that her father had taken all of her books out to the front yard and set them ablaze. She loved to read, and I suspect his intention was to crush her spark, to take from her what he felt was missing from himself. I imagine her standing in the yard, watching as the flames turn the pages to ash, and my heart breaks for her. I honestly don't know what could drive someone to do that, but it became part of her story and was passed down to me, so now it becomes part of my story too. However, she survived her trauma and went on to marry my grandfather Charles and have a family of her own that she loved and was proud of. I want to do the same, because even though Finn is gone now, that trauma is still alive and well. As time goes by, it gets less sharp, but it's still there, waiting under the surface to rear its ugly head whenever something triggers me. As anyone who's been through trauma knows, once it's triggered, you're right back in that original moment, feeling all those same feelings with just as much intensity. It's exhausting and demoralizing, and it can be seductive to get lost in my memories, to replay those traumatic events over and over until they become this heavy, beat-up suitcase I drag into every room with me. It's a paradox of wanting to remember the good, but getting stuck with the bad too, because I don't get to choose which memories stay with me. So I practice remembering the good things, the positive memories that don't make me feel heavy with regret. Things like family Thanksgiving at my grandparents'. Even though I saw them infrequently, and only when I was very young, I still have such strong memories of them 30 years later. I can remember that their house smelled different than my own, and I didn't like that smell. And I was very sensitive. I didn't want to use their silverware either, because I thought it was dirty and it had like spots on it, and it was just very clean, but I just didn't think it was, so I wouldn't eat that. I thought I might catch something from them, like oldness, I don't know. But in reality, their house didn't smell bad, their stuff was clean, but I was just very sensitive. So in addition to being sensitive, I have what polite society calls a weak stomach. Food and I always had an iffy relationship, and it's a lot like my son Finn and his gastro issues that he had in his time. And when I was 8, we packed up our car and we traveled 2 days to visit my grandmom and granddad in Kansas City for Thanksgiving. But upon arriving, we learned, much to our horror, that my grandmom had been so excited that we had come. She had made Thanksgiving dinner a week in advance of us arriving, like a week before, and didn't freeze it, just put it all in the refrigerator. And I can still remember eavesdropping on her and my dad in the kitchen, which wasn't hard because my grandma's voice was very iconic. And you could be heard 3 states away, several mountain ranges, and thankfully I got those pipes from her, so that's helped me. But I hear my dad say, "Wait, what, Mom?" And I hear, "I said, I was so worried about having a nice meal for you all that I made it all on Thursday." "But Mom, it is Thursday." "I know what goddamn day it is, thank you very much. It's Thanksgiving." "Do you mean you made all this last Thursday?" "That's what I said. Honestly, Jim, you can be a little slow sometimes." Now, in my grandmom's excitement and subsequent anxiety over our arrival, and almost likely an acute fear of disappointing us, she'd prepared the meal in advance, like way advance. So at this point, I took it upon myself to inform my brothers that in no way should anybody be eating the food because it was a week old. And it was moot for me because I wouldn't eat it because I wouldn't use the utensils. So I've always been kind of weird about what I won't and will eat. And not in a good way, like, oh, I'll only eat good, healthy things. More like, I only eat things that are white. That's delicious. If it's white, I like it. So I also made it look like I'd eaten more than I had at a young age. So I was a fan of the mush it all together, and then spread it back out randomly, and it makes it look like you picked over your food. But that can only get you so far in the parental misdirection department. So I had to up my game. And to my fortune, my family's kitchen table was one of those big old wooden spools that they used to wrap cable around, and it had all these holes in the center, and the center was hollow, and the top had holes, which, in a whole nother story, I won't go into this, anytime we brought family over, my mom would lovingly put a tablecloth over it, and we're like, what are you setting up, like booby traps for the guests when they put their glass down and there's just a hole there and it dumps over? We're like, oh, so anyways, I discovered that those holes led directly to the center of that spool. And so I would, take whatever I didn't want, and using my sleight of hand skills, which I was developing, kind of shove it down there for weeks and weeks and weeks. Until one night, when my shameful acts were discovered by the bumbling brilliance of Detective Dad. And, Mom, yes, honey, can I be done? Oh, honey, you still have your broccoli and hot dog to finish. Ugh. What was that? I said, okay, Mom. Good boy. Mom, yes, honey, could I have some water? Yes, honey. She got it from the table, and swoop, alakazam, them dogs and trees were down the hole and out of my life forever. Or until a few months later, and the slats from the table fell loose, and it prompted my well-intentioned dad to stumble upon the evidence of my heinous and wasteful act. Hey, Pat! This slat in the table's come loose. I just bumped it with my knee, and now it's loose. Oh, no, why'd you do that? I love this. That's my mother's response to anything that ever happens. Why'd you do that? Well, I didn't do it on purpose, honey. Well, can you fix it? Dad was now on his hands and knees underneath the table, thoroughly inspecting the problem area. Meanwhile, I'm slowly backing out of the kitchen. Well, I think so, but I'll have to take it out first, and then, I might as well clean out the inside. I can't really tell, but it looks like there's some junk down here. Hold on, let me just... What the hell is this? What is it, Jim? Well, it looks like it's a hot dog, Pat. Pretty dang dried up by the looks of it, too. And there's broccoli down here, too. What the hell is all that about? Lucas Justin Daniels. Cue It Wasn't Me by Shaggy, as both parental eyes land on my face. Busted again. I don't have a great track record of getting away with my shenanigans. All right, thank you for indulging me, you guys.
Did you eat the Thanksgiving dinner?
That's in the second half. I only gave you half the chapter because you never know. It's like everybody loves being read to, but sometimes it can be a little bit much. So if you like it, you can listen. In the second half, you find out. But to answer your question, of course I did not eat that. No, I was out. The story's really about who else had to eat it. Because from the very beginning, I was never going to eat it anyways because the forks were dirty and I can't use my hands. Grandma wouldn't let that happen. Well, and then my mother swears it was several weeks in advance. And so when I wrote the book and got the juice from both my parents, I said week because I was like, no one's going to believe several weeks. And she's like, it was 3 weeks. I remember.
Is that her mother-in-law, though?
Yes, that was her mother-in-law. So again, I respected my grandma and just did the 1 week instead. But so writing that was a great way to kind of deal with a lot of the grief. And I know a lot of people, that's what I learned through this. Everyone has their own grief, no matter what. We all have our story to tell. And I hope that I can encourage everybody to tell their stories. Could I ask that everyone just tells me their name? Would that be nice? Can we start with you?
My name is Josh.
And you're from the area?
Yeah, right down the street.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Josh.
I'm Elsa.
Elsa? And here? How do you spell it?
Ailsa.
Elsa. I like that. And what's the etymology of that? Do you know?
It's an island in Scotland.
Is it?
Yeah.
Bonnie. Lovely. Lovely lass. And this is Amanda, my wife. She can speak for herself, of course. Devin. Very nice to meet you, Devin. And we talked earlier from the area as well, right? Back here? Brandy. And I think we've met before, haven't we?
Yes, through Howell Main Street.
That's right, Howell Main Street. Well, thank you for being here. Yes. My Amanda and I work as running the business together, and by running the business, I mean she does literally everything. I just talk into a microphone. If none of this would happen without her, so I'm very lucky. And I see Kim back there, right? another star that helped me in the show at Bonnie and Clyde and saved my bacon when I directed that last year. So thank you for coming. And you, ma'am, in the pink?
Rita.
Rita.
Athens, Georgia.
From Athens, Georgia.
Originally from Michigan, but I lived down there for, 30, 40 years?
Do you find that you kind of pick up a little of that, a little of the Georgia? Does it come out in your voice at all?
No, not really, although they do say sometimes my husband and I, who's also from here, we moved down there, that they can hear it, but I really don't think.
I think they're just giving. Oh yeah, she's nodding over here. Like the y'alls and things like that. I think those come out a little bit more. I think it's just polite too. You're just trying to ingratiate in it. So
Yeah.
lovely.
Thankful for today.
Yeah.
Came in when it was snowing.
Right. Like, why did we come back up here? Yes. Yes. Well, thank you for being here. And you next, Norma. Lovely.
Ow.
Okay, and you're still here? You're still in Howell? Okay, lovely. Well, thank you guys for coming. Mr. in the back.
Leo Lucaro.
Leo? Oh, yes. Yes, I know your name.
Richard Fox.
I know your name, yeah.
I have a prank to plan, Richard.
Oh, good.
Later.
Good. So we'll do a little, at the end, if you want to do that or make a recording or those kind of things, we can do that. So that's always fun. One of the fun things about doing audiobooks is people aren't as much interested in getting my signature, but they do like to have a little recording of their favorite character. So one of my top characters is a dog, actually. That's one of the most famous ones I do. So you'll find me in random bookstores and libraries talking really goofy into somebody's phone and then being like, ha, 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 ha. And it's great. It's like my favorite thing in the world. So thank you for being here. Good to meet you finally. Yes. Oh, Standish. She's got great. We're talking characters from series now, so we have a real aficionado. So, and you, ma'am?
Oh, I'm Sandra.
Sandra.
We were just watching a couple of kids roll down the hill.
Isn't that lovely? That I paid them $5 before I. Yeah, I was like, can you give a little, get their juices flowing and all that. Yes.
No, I live.
And you're here too? Well, thank you for coming. And you, sir? Just a name.
Jeff,
Nice to meet you.
I didn't realize you were local. I just saw it on Facebook, so I had to come up here.
Oh, nice. Good. Good.
Or just in time. So.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Yeah, we were saying that I do live in Howell, and this has been such a great community for the couple years I've been here. It's really nice to get to know some people. So, thank you. No, Traverse City, I love it up there, but no, I don't think I could hang. I don't think so. So, before we move on, I wanted to just do a little promotion. At the Howell Community Theater, we're doing this summer, for the first time, an outdoor Shakespeare show. And so if you have any interest in being in it, all times, all shapes, all sizes, all people, I'd love them to come. I'm directing it. It's called The Merry Wives of Windsor. So if you take a look up here, it's got the dates, and it's at the Howell Nature Center. So we'll be partnering with them, so it'll be outdoors, and it's going to be a really fun weekend experience, and kid-friendly and family-friendly, and outdoor Shakespeare, and it's going to be really fun. So that's up here, and then in the fall, I'm directing Crybaby the Musical, so we'll need people for that as well. Crybaby is a John Waters film, which John Waters also did Hairspray, which they took and made into a very popular musical. That one did so well, they took one of his other movies and made it into it, and you can actually see the movie at the Howell Howell Historic Theater. They're showing it this weekend, the Crybaby. Not the musical we're going to do, but the actual movie, John Waters movie. So those are up here for your looks. I think we got through most of it. Is there any questions or anything that I can ask before we move on? Even if it's about the business or books in general, the publishing industry, those kind of things. I'm open to any and all. Stupid voices. Does everybody, do you guys have pets at all? Do you use voices for your pets? That's like the real good way to know somebody. If you hear their pet voice, then you've gotten pretty close to that person. But everybody, I know if you've got a pet, you've got a voice for them. Yeah. Well, that's all I really had. I appreciate you guys being here today, and happy to sign anything if you've got it, or talk further, but don't want to hold anybody here. Yeah.
So when you read a story, do you read through it first so that you have an idea, and then so you really play it all out in your head?
It's a good question. So when I first started, yes. I don't do it anymore. I do what's called a cold read. So I get the script and I read it as I'm recording it. That does mean I go a little slower, and sometimes I have to look ahead and go back. But the amount that I'm recording, it's just too consuming to have to read it ahead of time. I also really enjoy a cold read. I find it very exciting. Like it's like I don't know what's coming, so I'm very much on my toes. But for about 5 years, I read religiously everything ahead of time, and then I would go through. This was before we used the fancy iPads. We were on paper, just printouts, and I would highlight all the different characters in different colors. So if I knew the main character was orange and orange is coming up, I'd know that. I did that for years and years and years, and that's the way you're supposed to do it. But now I don't do that now. But also the other thing that helps with that is audiobooks, especially the niche that I'm in. It's a huge world. Everything's an audiobook nowadays, for the most part. If you have something you like, you can listen to it. But the ones that I do are a lot of series. So I've done maybe 10, 12, 14 books. So I'm reading it. I know kind of the idea. And then I also work very closely with authors these days, and they're very gracious about the process, and they provide me lists ahead of time of characters or potential things to look out for, like Mo should be from Texas or that kind of thing, so that I don't get too. But I've done it before where I screwed up. I didn't.
You read it through, and you know Mo is from Texas.
If you don't.
Oh, I know all of that.
The good thing is, a good writer will generally, a rule of thumb is that they will tell you the first time where that person is. It's not a great writer that says Mo's like it throughout the whole book, and then on page 299, by the way, Mo's from Texas. Now, I have had that before, but it was for an Irish guy. The whole book he goes through, and then at the end, they're like, in his Irish brogue. And I was like, wait, what? No! So I had to go back and fix it, every single little one. You just cut it in and pop it in. I've had there's all sorts of horror stories of, it should have been Valdar instead of Valdar or something like that. I made that up. I didn't actually do that. Now that I know that you're a fan, I don't want to say that.
They spoke about you, so they, like Keystroke Medium does these shows, and they just talked about how, because you did audiobooks that way,
Yeah.
that became...
That's canon now, as they say.
Regardless of what Fox says, or because you also did a Josh Hayes book.
Yeah.
I know both these guys. They're like, yeah, it became canon after that.
Well, the people he's referencing I've probably done maybe 30 to 40 books for these authors, especially Richard Fox. These are series. These guys have been writing for 10 years, and they write so many books a year. They're really prolific. It's very, very amazing.
Do an anime, you're going to have to do the voice.
I would love to. Yeah. Well, I always say, yeah. There's always those people that say if they make a cartoon of it, that would be cool. He does a lot of comic books now. One of the things that's great about audiobooks is they've kind of bridged a lot of gaps. So now there's motion comic books and things like that, and then the listening experience tied into it. And with social media, we're all kind of connected in a way too. And there's a lot of bad things about social media, but between the authors and the fans, the listeners, and narrators, there's like a lot of people that can have interactions and stuff, which is really cool. And a lot of these authors make themselves available in that way and are gracious and answer questions and things like that. So it's really fun to be a part of. So.
Are you the producer of the book, or do you send it off to somebody who then chops and crops?
So what I do is a clean, raw record. I record it, but if I make a mistake, I fix it right there. And then they get the file, then I send it off to post-production, who goes through and makes it acceptable for the download specs that they need, and also listens in case I made a mistake I didn't catch. Then I get those fixes, and I cut in just those little fixes that need to be. I have a book right now that I have to do fixes for, 2 fixes. I had a book before that was 99 fixes, so it just depends. There's times I really screw up and there's times I not, but you're going in and punching in all those little fixes. So yeah, that's a good question.
So can you do can you do voices of other people? I can't say that.
A little bit.
Yeah,
I tend to...
do the Irish.
Yeah, Irish or Scottish. Those ones I work on, although I have a good story of doing Scottish for a whole book. It was from the first-person perspective of the Scottish person, so I had to do Scottish the whole time. And then he interacts with other people who don't have a Scottish accent. And I did the whole book, and I got an email from a lovely gentleman in Scotland saying, hey, mate, I really love what you're doing with your narration, but your Scottish is rubbish. And he goes on this whole thing, but he was really nice, and we actually talked, and he gave me a bunch of pointers and stuff like that, and he's like, well, not mine, mine's a different kind, and then, talks about it. So it's a learning experience. You had a question, didn't you?
I was wondering, is there sound effects or background music or anything?
That's a really good question. Straight audiobooks would not have that. They might have a little intro music at the beginning of like Random House Audio presents. They'll have that. Straight, and it won't have anything in it. Once you add those elements, they start to call that audio theater or audio drama theater. And those there are a niche for that where they do full on with the feet going and all that stuff like old radio shows. It's really cool. But for straight audiobooks, no. So yeah, if they say something, if something's written in, you have to just read it exactly. So if it's like burp, you gotta like try to do a burp or something like that. Yeah, whatever you think is best for it. So yeah, it's fun. It's very cool.
How many hours do you knock out doing this? Because you produce a lot.
I do about a book a week, but that would tend to be maybe like 9 hours of recorded audio. So if a book is 100,000 words, most books are around 100 for a general kind of pop culture one, fiction. So that translates to about 10 hours, so about 10,000 words per 1 hour of audio listening. Now, it tends to take us 2 to 1, which means if it's 1 hour of listen, we've put 2 hours in to record that. So for every hour I spend in the booth, I get a half an hour of material. That's what my ratio is. So if I do 9 hours in a week, then that's going to be about 3 hours a day, which is a really. I'm embarrassed to say that's what my workday is, but it does fry your brain, and then there's a lot of other stuff behind that. So.
Did you expect you to blow up? So.
Of course.
What got me off of audiobooks?
Yes, of course.
Was altered carbon.
Yeah.
And then then I went to, I was like, okay, so what else he narrates? Because you are an excellent performer.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Paid him $5 too.
That brought me to Richard Fox, the Armor series, the first series.
Yeah.
And then I had to go back to the Ember Wars. Then I became a beta reader for Fox.
Oh, you're part of his like echelon of, yeah. Fantastic.
But, well, that was, it's very interesting, and that's why I want to play a prank on Richard later.
Good.
So, but,
I'm all for it.
yeah, but it was, so I kind of watched, like, through the years, and now you're kind of one of the names. You're an R.C. Bray guy, a Luke Daniels guy. That's the top tier. Did you ever expect that when you got into it?
Yes and no. I mean, it sounds, so before I started in audiobooks, my older brother was an audiobook narrator for that same company that I started at. And so due to his really good reputation, I, knew about audiobooks and production for a while before I even did it. And I was like, I really want that. You know what I mean? Like I had this draw to it. So I think that's why I say, I'm kind of glib and say yes, because it was something I really wanted. I thought, this suits all my little niches that I'm good at. But to have the wonderful kind of positive trajectory of my career, I'm just humbled by it. So it's very lovely.
When did you start listening to him? How many years ago?
So I commute a lot for my day job, and my best friend had said, you need to start doing audiobooks, because I used to love to read. I love reading.
Yeah.
As you get older, do the professional life, you have less and less time to do.
It's hard, yeah.
So then I got into audiobooks, and he got me, so Altered Carbon, I really liked the first 2 you did.
Uh-huh.
Not so much the third book and the other.
Yeah.
But then I said, well, this was, and that was very new to me. I would have to say, I couldn't even remember.
If it was Altered Carbon, it would have been at least 8 years ago. I mean, I didn't do that. That was towards the beginning. So most of the career, yeah.
Scott Moon's also a friend of
I
mine.
don't know the name of any audio person I've listened to.
And that's something that shifted too. When I started out, it wasn't as that way, and then there's these kind of niche groups growing up. And I also perform in genres that have a little more fan base. One, we're doing serials, so people that listen have spent literally, like, you've probably spent, I don't know, 1,000 hours listening to my voice, so there's an intimate connection too. And not just on the books, I call them at night, and I'm like, just go to bed, Leo, just go to bed, it's all right, quiet down. Yeah. So it is an interesting connection, and so it's a what do you call it, subculture. And there is that, we have conventions and things like that, and there's award ceremonies, and it's its own whole, like, kind of mini thing. But it's one of the things when you tell people, they always get that look of like, wait, that's an actual job? Yeah, that's a job. Of course it's a job. Yeah.
And the thing is, I did the same thing. I did the same proselytizing, right? So as I got into audiobooks, a lot of my colleagues were on the road, right? And I'll say, hey, you need to try doing this. So
Right.
now I've got about 8 or 9 of my friends who don't even read anymore, which I think is bad, but
Right.
they do.
No, yeah. And then I have a lot of people that are visually impaired, and that's kind of how audiobooks originally got their start, like, because that was what it was for, and then it kind of grew into something else. So when you hear from those people too, that's their only way to take in stuff. So it's kind of an honor to do that. But
You still be doing blooper reels.
yeah. So I do a blooper reel at the end of the books of all the times I screw up, because people tend to enjoy me making a fool of myself. And then I have to remember, if I'm doing a book, and I know some of my authors don't like swearing, so if I do the blooper reel, I really cut out any, and I try not to do the swearing. And then other ones, if I'm reading it and one of their characters drops an F-bomb, I'm like, all right, we're good to go. We can let the guns loose, because yeah, those are fun too, to see behind the curtain. So.
It is addicting, because I started driving back and forth in Tucson, and that made the time go so
It really
fast.
does, yeah.
And then I got where I didn't even want to read anymore. That makes me fall asleep. I'm like, okay,
Do you listen to a particular genre, do you find, that you like, or do you listen to anything that comes along?
I like stories about life,
Mhm.
real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes.
What's that genre?
So you would like nonfiction, so real stories.
But then, yes, but about, not real stories, but about life in general, just
Ah, okay, so it could be fiction, but yes, yeah. That would be like straight fiction, yeah, just straight fiction.
historical fiction.
Mm-hmm,
But I've been listening to a lot of the political books lately.
yeah,
That's the only way you can listen.
yeah.
to those darn things.
The information and stuff that you can absorb is different when I listen versus when I read. And I do find that as I get older, reading sometimes becomes a little more. Once we sit still, well, at least me, as soon as I sit still for more than 5 minutes, my body's like, oh, we're down? Okay, we're down. It's like, no, I'm reading. So, and that's one of the side effects. I haven't read for pleasure for 10 years, because it's so much of it is the work now. But luckily I like the books I do, so I'm very fortunate to get to do that.
I have another.
Yeah.
What do you do for vocal exhaustion?
One, I trained really hard, and I went to grad school, and they taught me how to use the equipment the right way. And so if you use it the right way, I mean, look at Broadway singers. They do 8 shows a day, or 8 shows a week, belting that stuff out. They get it too. Rest is the only thing that works. Proper hydration, only water. I can't survive without coffee, but I drink black coffee because I can't have any cream or anything like that. And
Carbonated beverages?
yep, I don't drink carbonated while I'm working at all. You would be surprised how many burps the human body produces. And sitting in a 4-by-7-foot box, it is not, that's the other thing. If any of you work from home, make sure you have well-ventilated space. The one thing I've learned, this is my PSA, make sure you have well-ventilated space, because even if it's a small office, I got one of those counters you put in, and it reads the emissions and what, especially because I'm talking a lot and I'm just breathing my own carbon monoxide or whatever. Just make sure that's a big push I have for my, someday they'll ask me to do a TV PSA for it. I'd love to. I'd be like, yes,
Is your voice insured?
ventilate your space. I don't, no.
Peter Carey, if you ever knew him, he's got a great voice. And he
Peter,
lives in Howell.
that name's familiar, huh?
He's
Peter
got a
Carey.
Great voice.
Yeah,
And I asked, he said his was insured. I
yeah,
said, oh yeah.
yeah.
It's his livelihood, yeah.
Yeah, you have to protect it though, and I do. That's another part of only working the 3 hours or however it works out, and then it doesn't get as tired. It gets tired more than that. You know what I mean? By the end of the day, it's a little. You can even hear it now. It's a little tighter than when I come in and it's real deep.
It changes in your recording,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I'll probably get like if you hear a chapter that's at the end of the day. So that's something that shouldn't happen. Like that's bad on me. They say you want that same tone throughout the whole book, and I've done it before where when I first started out, we had directors and engineers. Now it's all done alone. But there'd be people that say, let's go back and do the end of yesterday because you were sounding tired, and let's do that top of today when your voice is more awake. Yeah. So it's our job to say that we're consistent, but there are times I know I go in first thing in the morning and it's chapter 2, and then at the end of the day you're like, chapter 14. Yeah. So that's a good question.
Yeah, because you will go from like very deep,
Right.
very resonant to something high and screechy depending on the characters, and that's gotta be.
Again, if it's done the right way. There's only one voice. There's this kind of thing I do like that.
Yeah.
That one, I have a really hard time. I can only do that a little bit. So I have to pick and choose. Like, if there's a big monster, but not, I've done it before. I'm like, the big monster comes in, he's like, rah! And then like 2 chapters later, he's like giving a dissertation on like what it's like to be a monster. And you're like, monster has feelings. So you're like, oh my God, why did I do this? So you got to be smart what you pick. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you guys so much. You guys have been great. I really appreciate it.
Listen to it after you've read through it, like a cold read, then do you listen?
That's a really good question. In like little bits. So for instance, if I recorded something today, when I go in tomorrow morning, I may just listen to the last like 30 seconds of what I did to get kind of back in that flow. If I finish a book and it comes out several months later, I'll sometimes pick it up and listen for a few minutes just to see, because I never know, like if once you're 2 months away from it, you have a little distance, does it still sound good? Does it sound, it's more like I'm checking for that than listening to the whole book again. No. But there is someone whose job is to just listen and mark any mistakes I make. They're a proofer. They do that, and that's invaluable. There's a lot of people.
Do you listen for a different tone?
If I made a mistake, yeah. If I said,
The same 3 chapters later?
they could say that. If they said, your voice sounds really tired, but that doesn't really happen. It's more about, oh, you did that in the voice for Stephen, and that should have been Carl. They'll catch things like that. Yeah, and you're like, oh, yeah, of course. Or, yeah, go ahead.
Who are these people? Do they work for the,
It's a lot of independent contractors like myself. Yep. And then there are big publishing houses, just like anything. There's the big ones like Podium Audio, there's Penguin Random House, Scholastic, and those are all, they have their own division of audiobook production. And then there's a lot of small-time people like me that have small production houses where we may produce something, and I may produce through the company with an independent author or an author who has, maybe they're a big author for a publisher, but they also have some more books they want to independently publish and just make the money off it without having to sell it. So it's a big mix of how it actually happens. But yeah, that's a good question. It's an interesting industry too, because it's not been around for more than, it's still growing and people are learning, so there's a lot of things. And it marries so well with reading and literature and all those things, so it actually has a huge base. I've gotten to do a lot of back catalog stuff, which is always really fun, like some old Jack Kerouac and things like that they republished, and we got to do stuff for, and that was really cool. Philip Roth and all that, so.
Do you have a favorite voice or character, or are you?
Oberon, the dog one is the one that's gotten me the most, like,
okay, we want to hear it.
Okay, Oberon likes sausages and he likes his belly to be rubbed and he's very like, oh, what's that? I don't know. Okay, so we're going back to the subject at hand. I forgot what it was. Can anyone tell me? I'm tired.
so he's like very, like a dog, big and broad. That one's a lot of fun to do. Yeah.
Have a dog.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's what I was mentioning. If we have pets, those are, and I find myself starting to use that for, I have several dogs and cats, and so, and then I'm like castigating myself, like, that's such a cheat. You can't use that. That's Oberon's voice. You got to come up with a new name or a new voice for that dog. And I'm like, but it's so good. Yeah. Yeah, but that comes through a lot with the voices and listening and, using stuff from life and putting it into the actual work has been fun.
Is Oberon's voice hard for you to sustain like
No, because I'm not actually doing it on my vocal cords. It's a little more in my chest. I tend to try to open it up and then push down into here. If I was really straining, if I did that, that would be really not really great, which is a little more for Starbuck, who's his brother. And he just says, yes, food. Oh, it's a little higher. Yeah, so.
there's the novella from his perspective? I
Yeah.
think it was.
Yeah. I find them really fun to do it that way. And there's another little nifty thing that I find it easier to narrate a first-person narration, where first person being like, I went to the store, I saw a monster, I killed the monster. Because I'm playing a character, so for me, I make less mistakes for some reason, because I'm kind of inhabiting that. When it's straight third-person narration of Carl went to the store, Carl killed a monster, it's harder to find that natural tone and not make it sound so I'm reading in this inflection of tone that makes it perfect, but then you're losing the content and not just telling the story to somebody. But yeah, Oberon, I don't know what it is. I think he lives inside of me, and anytime he comes out, I'm surprised by what he says. And luckily, the author is very friendly, and we're good friends, so he's okay with me taking a little of that.
So like with Oberon or with Kevin Hearns and Delilah Dawson's, like the
Yeah.
English, like the comedic ones, do you enjoy those more?
Oh yeah,
Like,
I love comedy. I love that.
things like that in there.
Yeah, my mother had to. I hired my mom once because it was I wanted her to read the book ahead of time just in case there was anything that I needed to know about. I should never have done that. My mom's like, this is stupid. Like, they just make fart jokes and like exactly what you said. And I'm like, it's pretty funny to me. She's like, well, I just don't know. It's so like, why? Yeah,
The tedious task of painting and repainting a room.
The book she's talking about, there's a character that's a goat and just is constantly obsessed with eating boots. So he'll just come up to people and be like, those are nice boots you have there. Can I just take a sniff of those boots? Yeah, it's very kind of really base fun humor, but it's a goat that used to be a king that's turned into a goat. So those kind of books I love because they're such a, they really kind of pique my imagination. And how would a goat that used to be a king talk? You know what I mean? How would he have kind of a more formal voice, but he's also kind of got a goat thing going on? So how can you work that in and not make it annoying? So like everyone's like, shut up, goat. Yeah, so those are the ones that I have fun with that. That's really fun. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, good deal, guys. Thank you again for coming. I hope you all get to tell your stories too, and I appreciate you the back and forth and opening up like that. That was really nice. Thank you, guys. If you want anything signed or a voice thing, or we're going to do a prank on someone, we can do that now too. All right? Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. I'm just going to remind everyone a few things. We are closed in the library now, so when you're ready to leave, you just have to make sure to exit through those back doors, those glass doors some of you might have entered through. And then we do have some upcoming events. On this Sunday, April 24th, 2 to 3:30 p.m., we have Gardening 101 with MSU Extension. This will be a launch of our new seed library that's going to be upstairs where you could actually take out some seeds to plant yourself. Yeah, and at the event, you get some free wildflower seed packets for anyone who comes. So that'll be fun. And then we have our knit night. That's the second and fourth Wednesday every month. And that next one is upcoming Wednesday, April 27th, 6 to 8 p.m. in the Colbert Room down there. And then next Thursday, we have Howell's favorite book of 2021 book chat. In March, we did a March Book Madness of the best 2021 books, and this one we'll be reading or discussing the winning book of that one that patrons helped pick, which is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. So if you're ever interested in talking about that book, you can come on down. So yeah, feel free to talk more with Luke and have a good rest of your day. Enjoy the weather.